Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, my name is Tuck Kamin.
Tuck. The man, the myth, the master of voices. The tales of Tuck, they never cease to amaze.
Hi. This is a special message.
It's like we've been transported from the past, made into some kind of characters. We got to see Ghostbusters.
I'm on today on the Tour de France, and all I know is that there are people outside, but somehow I'm not getting anywhere.
We've been able to elevate his ability to see about what the possibilities are.
Well, when I think of Tuck being young, I think of that TV series, The Wonder Years, because every single photo I saw of him as a youngster, he was that kid who was probably going down the hill at 90 miles an hour in a radio flyer. He was the kid who probably made his own skateboard by dismantling roller skates. In his stories, All My Fathers, when I read and hear those stories, I see 8mm movies with scratches in my mind, and I think his childhood was very rich with those kind of experiences. It was the time in our lives when life was actually quite joyous.
Our friendship began 25 years ago thanks to Trevor Romain and a little digital agency project. We were looking for a writer, and Tuck was a go-to guy that Trevor brought in. From that point on, we became good friends as we worked together, worked on a bunch of cool creative projects. Tuck was a pretty creative guy.
We met in a very unusual circumstance. I was driving down Walsh Tarleton, and a lady pulled out in front of me at Thousand Oaks, and I totaled my BMW. And I got out of the car, and this guy comes up to me from behind and says, "Are you okay?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, "I'm Tuck Kamin." And from that day until now, which was over 25 years ago, we've been best friends.
Speech. The greatest present that I have in my life is my friends. That's it.
I've known Tuck for 35 years. I got a call from him. I had just got to town to Boston. I was a former advertising creative director, was in town, and he heard about it, and I got a call. He said, "I've got this ad agency. Can I see your portfolio?" So I took it over there, and he never gave me any work. And but we remained friends for all those years.
What do you think?
Here's to friends and lovers.
Or the latter.
Shalom.
He had such a broad reach of people, and the commonality there is the creativity and the humanity that you all shared in so many different walks. But the commonality is these are people that have a huge sense of humanity and are extremely creative.
Get me back to the start. Get me back to the start.
I always thought he was a good-looking guy in a Viking kind of way as we would address each other. I would always joke around with Veronica that I was always jealous of Tuck's hair because, A, he still had it, and then B, he could, still do cool stuff with it.
He had the hair, he had that. I always told him that I thought his hair looked like a weatherman on TV. He had a weatherman's head, that shape, that hair, sort of a broadcaster. So that hair made him look younger, and it was always very stylish and had the little flip in the front.
Somewhere down the line, about 10 years ago, Tuck called me with this Russian persona. This voice that he did was so hilarious, and he did it so well that it gave him the nickname Tarkovsky. From that point on, every time he'd call, I'd answer the phone and say, Tarkovsky. And so his Russian alter ego was born.
It's his voices. He could do things with his voice into a character that would just melt me.
But he would leave me the craziest voice messages, right? With his voices, he leaves me a voice message, and of course he would do his female version of Tuck. Right. What are you wearing? And of course my wife's hearing me listen to the voice message on speakerphone. She's like, "Who's that?" And I'm start laughing, "Babe, that's Tuck." "No, it isn't." Like, "Come over here and listen to this." And so sure enough, and I'm like, oh my God. This guy.
Yeah, he always went to the edge.
So we would leave each other messages in different accents. I'd call him up and I'd say, "Hey, Todd, this is Cody McBride from. I'm from Victoria area. I heard you doing some pro bono work. Has that got anything to do with And he would, of course, he would send something back to me with a Russian accent, and then I would do an African accent, and so we had a lot of fun.
Tuck was always a staple as one of the actors when I needed a comedic voice, and always a collaborator, even if he wasn't in front of the camera. One film that I was doing at one point, I was talking to Tuck. I said, next film I'm going to do, I'm thinking of doing this all-Latino cast. And I went on to tell him of the story. And next thing you know, Tuck breaks out into this Mexican voice.
And you will be a great father.
It just had me rolling on the floor as he went on with this crazy Spanish voice of his. He ended up being the only non-Latino in our cast, playing an elderly Mexican wrestler and a mustache that had a mind of its own.
We all have times when we have money and sometimes we don't have money. And we don't have resources, and this one time in his life he didn't have a lot of resource, and he was walking, and he didn't have his car, and lost the house, and he had an apartment, and so he called me. He said, "You ain't gonna believe this, Jim." I said, "What?" He said, I was praying, and I was really hungry, and I was wanting a salad. And so I was walking home, and I saw this sign in the guy's yard, and it said, "Please take some." And I looked down, and there was like cauliflower and lettuce and all the stuff you have for a salad in his front yard. And it said, "Take some." And they had these little baggies. And so Tuck said, "I got the baggie," and I filled it up. I took it home. I got my wok, got those vegetables going, and man, was it good. I said, awesome. Because he was always positive. I don't care how much you knocked him down. There's a passage that says you knock a righteous man down 7 times and he gets right back up. That was Tuck. He'd get right back up.
I lived very close, just 3 or 4 blocks away from him when he was in up there off Enfield, and I was off Enfield. And that time when he didn't have a car for a while, and he was riding that bicycle all over town. He'd pop into my house, then I'd drive off down to Whole Foods. There he'd be at Whole Foods. Then I'd say, "Okay, see you later." And I'd quickly nip into Book People, and there he was at Book People.
There's a lot of positive things about Tuck, because he lived.
He did.
Fully lived.
Mm-hmm.
He was always enthusiastic. Every single thing he got interested in, he didn't do anything lightly. And his enthusiasm was infectious.
It was undeniable. He emulated this Superman image in his heart, and he didn't, just like he didn't want to tell anybody his age, he didn't want to tell anybody he was in pain, he didn't want to tell anybody that he was ill for the longest time. He thought maybe he would be that less than 1% that actually kicks pancreatic's butt, you know.
We did the polar bear plunge the other day on January 1st in his honor.
He tried to make me do that polar jump for 20-something years, and I refused every single time.
Every year we can do that. Every single year we can do that in honor of Tuck. It's such an analogy for life. I think we get in the way of ourselves so much because we think one thing and it turns out to be something altogether different.
And I remember Blythe texted Tuck and said, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing this weekend?" And he sent a one-word note. He said, "You." He loved his girls. And he loved me. He loved you, David. He loved Kat. He loved all of his friends, Trevor, so much. And for a man that had that much compassion for his friends, I will sorely miss him.
And I met, of course, at a place which we would have something in common, which was the tea section at Whole Foods and morning. And so we both were at our peak. We had our caffeine and our tea, but we weren't finished with our first, I like to make it 15 to 20 minute date time. It went from 15 to 20 minute date time to, "Do you want to go with me to this vintage shop?" "Oh yeah, okay, that sounds like fun." And so we went to some treasure hunting. That went from there, we went to East 7th Street. So we went and looked at cemeteries. And that was really a lot of fun because it was so bizarre. And he had all these ideas that kept popping in his head, and we were so not done with each other, but we wanted to see how long this would go. I mean, it was a 5-hour date that was supposed to be 15 to 20 minutes to see if it was a worthy match. So I had to leave like the next 2 days. I was based in Chicago at the time, and then I would go from Chicago after my 4-day trips, and then I would have to go to Minnesota to help with sister to take care of mom because she was sick. So I said, "Well, you're just going to have to wait till I get back, but you're going to come back, right? You're going to come back, right?" And then I told my mom, "I think I found somebody," and it's crazy because I prayed for somebody that would keep up with me, that would swim and bike and run and like to go walking on a trail in the middle of the night, or like to be downtown and like downtown things. And he just kept checking off the boxes and checking off the boxes. And I had a hard time keeping up with him.
Well, finally, he found his love in Kat. And I remember when he first met Kat, he said, "Hey, I got to come over and introduce you to Kat." And so we went up on my roof deck, and he said, "Oh, she's fantastic. I just love her so much." And then finally they got married.
Yeah.
And Kat was probably one of the biggest blessings, if not the blessing, of Tuck's life.
Tuck and Kat are like two peas in a pod. And then, of course, they both are funny people.
But I tell you what, God gave him, other than his kids visiting, the best gift in the world was Kat.
I would like to reach out to them
Because her caregiving, her enthusiasm, her love for him cradled him till the very end of his life. And he died knowing he was very loved and adored by her. That warms my heart to know that he, some people die very empty, very alone, very angry. But he died with this ball of life with him.
If you had 1, 2, or 3 words to describe Tuck, what's the word that bubbles up?
Compassion, love, life.
He's also very fearless. He would go and do things that I didn't think were possible. The idea of climbing up those UT statues on those Mustangs and took pictures, and I had an idea I wanted to do it, and he totally went for it. We got up in the morning, because mornings are hard for me to get up. We did that. After 20 rounds of chemotherapy, is there any possible way? We've got to go to Italy. We've got to go to Florence and Venice. Oh, I'm sure. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I think we can do it. And not only that Friday he gets unhooked from, it's a 2-day treatment for this type of chemo that he was on, and he did 20 rounds of those. He gets hooked on Friday. We got on the plane Saturday and arrived in Florence, and then he arranges our hotel to be right there by the Uffizi Gallery, and it's a block and a half. You get in there and it's 5 flights to the top. And he's like, I can do this. Okay, we'll go slow. There's no slow with him. He did it. He was fearless, and I think it stemmed from his DNA. He's like a conglomerate of The Greatest Showman, the Superman. He was such a goofy guy. I wouldn't know what was going to happen until that next morning. And it was like, where are you from? He's everything all wrapped up in one. There's never going to be anybody ever close to him. He really broke the mold.
His photographs really show that little boy having a great time, and that's the way I will always remember him. That's the way I want to remember him, is because I think that little boy was inside right till the very end, and he didn't lose that boyhood magic, which is why he was such a great creative individual, and why he was such a great friend, is that he was able to tap into that part of life where the magic lives.